Welcome to the deep dive. This one is really custom tailored for you. If you're the person who needs to get ahead of the curve fast on what feels like the next great challenge in enterprise security, we're talking about agentic AI.
Right.
And we've done a deep dive into sources that are making a really specific and I think powerful argument. They're saying that securing these AI agents, it's not really an AI governance problem at its core.
No, not primarily.
It's fundamentally an identity problem. And if that's true, it means the responsibility, the accountability, it lands squarely on the CISO.
And that reframing is absolutely crucial right now. I mean, you can feel the pressure from business leaders. They are pushing and pushing hard to deploy these autonomous agents.
The competitive advantage is just too big to ignore.
It's enormous. But security teams are in the familiar, really uncomfortable spot.
Make it safe, but don't slow us down.
Exactly. Enable the innovation, secure it, but for goodness sake, don't be the roadblock. And if we don't define the security perimeter for this now, the risks are going to define our future breach response.
Okay, let's unpack this. What I love about this is that the narrative tension here feels so familiar. Our sources, they draw this direct parallel back to the days of, well, the rapid rollout of cloud.
And SaaS and DevOps.
All of them. In every single one of those huge tech shifts, security struggled to keep up at first. But eventually, where did the risk and the solution always end up meeting?
Right in the middle. At identity.
Always comes back to identity management.
That parallel is exactly what makes this analysis so compelling. For decades, security was really built around a single model.
The human matter.
The human identity model, yes. You had centralized employees, you had well-defined roles, predictable access reviews, and this is critical, a predictable offboarding process.
When someone leaves, you turn off their access. Simple.
That was the foundational old model.
Oh! Then came what we can call disruptor number one, machine identities.
All the service accounts, the API keys.
Exactly. They multiplied like crazy across cloud infrastructure, CI/CD pipelines, you name it. And governance, it lagged behind. But even with that massive scale, a core assumption still held.
That they were predictable.
Pretty much. Machine identities, they generally perform predictable, scheduled workloads. They're just scripts following static instructions.
But the whole point of this deep dive is that AI agents disruptor 2, they don't just bend those rules.
They shatter them entirely.
They shatter them. So you're saying they don't just complicate things. They are a whole new class of identity. What is that fundamental difference? What makes an agent so much harder to secure than, say, a standard service account?
It comes down to two words, autonomy and intent. The source materials we looked at highlight this unique fusion of characteristics that just didn't exist before. On the one hand, the agents behave with intent.
Like a human.
Like a human deciding the best path to a goal. But they operate with the scale and persistence of a machine.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's pause on that word. Intent. We're not talking about consciousness, are we? What does intent actually mean in a security context?
No, not consciousness. It means a highly dynamic decision-making capability. A traditional machine identity, it just executes predefined code. If this happens, do that.
Right.
An AI agent, especially in an agentic workflow, is given a high-level objective. Something like, investigate this market opportunity.
And that's it?
That's it. The agent then autonomously figures out the sequence of actions, the tools it needs, the path to achieve that goal. It can change its execution path on the fly, access multiple systems, even spawn sub-agents to finish the mission.
All without a human directly involved in those micro-decisions.
Exactly. No direct intervention.
So an agent's behavior, and therefore what it needs to access, it's completely unpredictable.
It is, and they're decentralized by default. A developer can spin one up in minutes. They operate across multiple siloed systems. From an identity perspective, this is, it's the most complex combination possible.
Because they're doing everything a human does.
They authenticate, they authorize, and they take autonomous action, but they just don't fit into any of our existing human-centric security containers.
Okay, so if we connect this new unpredictable identity class back to, foundational security risks, identity is still the most common root cause of breaches.
Still number one.
We see it constantly. Credentials get abused, privileges just accumulate over time, ownership gets blurry.
And agentic AI just pours gasoline on that fire. It amplifies all of those historical risks. Think about the speed of deployment.
Move fast and break things.
Right. When a developer needs an agent to just work, The path of least resistance is to grant it broad access from the get-go.
Just give it database read-write on the entire finance table, just in case.
You've seen it happen, and
Yeah.
that broad access, which is usually granted out of pure convenience or speed, it's almost never reviewed or audited later.
And nobody ever cleans them up.
Critically, our sources noted that very few agents are ever properly decommissioned. An agent created for a 6-week project could just keep running indefinitely, holding on to all those elevated privileges long after the project, or even the person who created it, is long gone.
So we're just creating thousands of, what the sources call them, always-on, overprivileged identities.
That's the phrase.
That sounds like an attacker's dream. Just the most perfect low-hanging fruit.
It's the perfect target. It doesn't sleep. It often has way more access than it actually needs. And it lacks that simple, familiar security check of a human offboarding process.
There's no farewell party for an agent.
None at all. And the risk is so high that the sources we reviewed point out that OWASP, the organization that tracks web app security, has already qualified the specific risks of these agents. This isn't some theoretical future problem. It's a current, recognized threat surface.
But wait a minute. How is this really different from, say, a long-running service account with high privileges? Security teams have been wrangling those for a decade. Why can't we just stick an agent behind an existing PAM solution, a privileged access management tool, and call it a day?
And that's the critical difference. That's the gap between the predictable machine identity, like a service account, and the autonomous agent. PAM and traditional IAM tools, they were built with a fundamental assumption
That users are people.
that users are people, or that the workloads are static and predictable and live in a single directory. That is their design constraint.
And agents break every one of those rules.
Every single one. Agents don't live in one directory. They move fluidly across platforms. They go from the AI platform to the cloud infrastructure, into the SaaS application, and finally right into the sensitive data layer.
And their roles aren't static.
Not at all, because their intent allows them to generate new necessary actions on the fly. So relying on these legacy human-centric controls, it just creates massive blind spots.
And worse, a false sense of security.
That's the real danger.
So trying to cram an agentic AI identity into a human-sized identity box is just, it's doomed to fail.
It is. And here's a word of caution, and this is aimed directly at the CISO. Relying solely on the AI platform vendors to solve this is just as risky.
Why is that?
The sources really emphasize this, just like the cloud providers. They solved the infrastructure security of the cloud, but they left the enterprise identity risk to you, to the organization.
Right, the shared responsibility model.
It's the same thing here. The agent platform vendors will solve the platform-level problems. But the enterprise identity piece, the complexity of linking that agent to your company's specific data and infrastructure, that's on you. That remains an internal responsibility.
That sounds, frankly, a little overwhelming. If the old controls are failing, we can't restrict innovation, and we can't just hand the problem off to vendors. Where do you even start? Are we saying CISOs need to rip and replace their whole tech stack overnight?
No, and that's the beauty of the argument. The solution relies on applying a discipline that CISOs already know inside and out, lifecycle management.
Okay.
But it has to be adapted for the speed and the highly decentralized nature of AI. We have to treat the agent's lifecycle with the exact same rigor we use for employees, from onboarding at creation all the way through to offboarding at decommissioning.
Let's detail those steps, because this is the actionable part. This is what you can actually do. What are the key lifecycle steps the sources laid out?
Okay, there are 5 essential steps. First, and maybe most important, is ownership. Every single agent must have clear, explicit human ownership, and that ownership needs to be tied back to your central identity provider.
No anonymous orphan agents running around.
Absolutely not. Without ownership, you have zero accountability when an agent goes rogue or just makes a mistake.
That sounds simple, but why is that harder for an agent than for, say, a traditional app?
Because of how they're born. Agents are often created on the fly by transient teams or even individual developers for short-term tasks. The ownership gets set to the developer,
Who then moves to another team 6 weeks later?
or leaves the company. And the agent keeps running in production. Who owns that risk? This discipline forces clear, durable ownership from day one.
Okay, what's step 2?
Step 2 is purpose. The agent's purpose has to be explicit, and this is the key part, measurable. If an agent is built to summarize Q3 financials, its purpose should state that, and its actions should be measurable against that goal.
That becomes your baseline for detecting weird behavior later.
It's the foundation for all your detection.
And then I imagine we get to access control. This has to be where most of the risk is sitting right now.
Absolutely. Step 3 is access discipline. Access must align only with what the agent actually does to achieve its measurable purpose, not what was convenient to give it when it was created.
So real least privilege, continuously evaluated.
Continuously, which leads right into step 4, visibility.
You can't protect what you can't see.
It's non-negotiable. Continuous visibility. You have to be able to track the agent's activity in real time so you can spot privilege drift early.
And privilege drift is when an agent starts accumulating or using access it wasn't supposed to have.
Exactly. And with agents, that drift can happen so much faster and with much greater consequences than with a human.
And finally, the part everyone forgets, the cleanup.
Step 5, revocation. Access has to be revoked automatically. When agents go idle, when their project officially ends, or when their owner leaves the company. Without automated, purpose-driven revocation, you just guarantee agent sprawl.
A huge landscape of high-risk, unknown identities running loose. A nightmare.
It's a complete nightmare.
So we've talked about lifecycle, but the sources stress that the real critical shift here is moving beyond just managing the agent itself. They say agent identity security is fundamentally a data correlation problem. I love that phrase. Why is correlation so important?
Because you simply cannot understand an agent's risk by only looking at the agent inside its platform. It's like trying to understand a person's job by only looking at their desk.
You're missing all the context.
All of it. The true risk is defined not by the agent, but by what that agent can reach. The sensitive apps, the critical infrastructure, the crown jewel data. Securing these agents requires correlating identity signals across 5 distinct and usually siloed layers. You have to create a single holistic view of what that agent is doing.
Okay, let's walk through those 5 layers. Where does the agent start its life?
It begins in layer 1, the agent platform itself.
Right, but its access is governed by...
Layer 2, the central identity provider.
Then it has to run on something.
So its actions take place on the underlying infrastructure layer 3, your cloud VMs, your containers.
And from there, it's interacting with what? Enterprise app.
Exactly. Layer 4 is applications, like Salesforce or your ERP system, and then the ultimate target, the prize for any attacker.
Layer 5, the data itself, the actual sensitive information it can read, modify, or exfiltrate.
Right. And if your security team is only looking at layers 1 and 3, they have absolutely no idea what sensitive financial or customer data that agent is actually touching in layer 5.
Zero visibility.
Zero. The correlation is what provides the context. It's the only way a CISO can definitively answer those essential questions for an audit or an incident response.
The who, what, when, where, why.
Who had access? Why did they have it tied back to that measurable purpose? Was it appropriate based on what it was really doing? And most importantly, should that access still exist today?
Without that 5-layer context, those questions are dangerously unanswerable. Let's talk about the organizational reality for a second. The sources note that right now, most companies are stuck in a reactive phase. They're basically finding agent sprawl after it's already in production.
They're just putting out fires.
Yes, constantly.
And that reactive phase, it has to end. The next essential stage is prevention. This means identity discipline has to move much, much earlier in the process.
Shifting left.
All the way left. Right to the moment agents are created. The builders, the developers, they need automated guardrails that force clarity around intent and scope right at creation time. You have to make it hard to default to broad privileges.
So this is an engineering problem as much as a security one.
Absolutely.
So what does this all mean then? What's the ultimate consequence if this identity discipline is just absent?
It means that eventually AI adoption will collapse under the weight of its own risk. I mean, we're talking about inevitable high-profile breaches. We're talking severe compliance failures. And then you get the executive backlash that will slow down innovation far more drastically than any proactive security measure ever could.
If you can't trust the agent, you can't use the agent.
You can't trust the agent if you don't manage its identity. It's that simple.
The conviction here seems really clear. The organizations that are going to succeed with agentic AI at scale, they're going to be the ones that recognize early on that securing it is an identity responsibility.
It turns what could be a massive decentralized security threat into a managed, scalable capability, safe, agile, and secure.
So I think our core takeaway for you today is vital. The technological novelty of agentic AI, it's exciting, but it shouldn't obscure the familiar foundational task of managing identity life cycles.
It's a new spin on an old problem.
A very new spin. But this time, the sheer scale and that autonomous intent, it demands immediate, continuous cross-system correlation across all 5 of those layers of infrastructure and data.
And to just leave you with a final thought, let's go back to that idea that agents behave with intent and that their purpose must be explicit and measurable.
Okay.
We talked about revoking access when agents go idle. That's good hygiene. But the real long-term security hurdle, it might be moving beyond just checking if the agent is still active. It might be about continuously verifying if the agent's intent is still aligned with its measurable purpose.
So not just what it's doing, but why.
Exactly. If that alignment breaks, if the agent starts using access in a way that is technically allowed but is functionally or even ethically outside its stated purpose, how quickly can your security systems intervene?
That's a whole other level.
It pushes accountability and security way beyond traditional offboarding. It requires dynamic, real-time intervention based on observed behavior. That's the next frontier.